So, you've got files to store. Google Drive, Dropbox, tempting. But here's the thing, with them, you're not really the boss of your own data. They decide the rules, they scan your stuff, and in some cases, they can even look at your files. That's where Nextcloud changes the game. Yes, you are still renting space if you want to use AWS, but this time you decide what software runs on it, how it's secured, and who gets access. So, let's dive in. When deploying Nextcloud on AWS, the architecture typically comes down to three core services: EC2, RDS, and S3. EC2 will be hosting your Nextcloud Docker container. RDS will be handling Nextcloud metadata like users, shares, or file indexing. And finally, S3 will be storing your files. So let's start with creating infrastructure, and the first thing would be to create buckets that will be serving as external storage. Let's name the first bucket as mcomputing-team because it will be used by all team members. We want to block all public access, and let's enable versioning. So let's create it. Oops, the bucket name is not unique, so let's rename it to something longer. And let's try again. Brilliant. So now let's create another bucket that will be used just by our administrator. You can have more or less buckets, it's entirely up to you. I'm creating two just for demonstration. So both of these buckets have exactly the same settings. So yeah, let's create it. Brilliant. Now we can create our EC2 instance. Before we do that, please make sure that you have created and configured at least one public subnet in your VPC. So let's name our instance. We can keep Amazon Linux as AMI and T3 Micro as instance type. We don't need a key pair because we'll be using SSM to connect to the instance. And let's change the VPC to the custom one. As you can see, I keep the instance in a public subnet. So let's create a new security group, give it meaningful name and description, and let's remove its SSH security group rule because we will not need it. The only rule that I'll be using is HTTPS connection from all sources, but of course make this rule tighter if you'll be using this in production. 8 gigs is not enough for instance storage, so let's change it to 16. And finally, let's create an IAM role for our instance. Let's start with the SSM access permissions. So let's click on Create Role. This role will be used by the EC2. And the permissions that we need is named Amazon SSM Managed Instance Core. So select that one. Give your role a name. And once we create this role and attach it to our instance, we should be able to connect to it via SSM. Another thing that our EC2 instance will need is access to the S3 buckets that we've created earlier. So let's update our role. We will need to add permissions by creating an inline policy. And it will be EC2 service. So let's use a JSON editor to save some time, as I have prepared a policy already. So we just need to copy paste it here. Don't worry, I will attach it to the video description. The policy is self-explanatory really. The first statement is needed for debugging, and other statements, they're straightforward. Just take some time to go through them. So once you've created a policy and updated your role, we can go back to our EC2 console. Alright, we are back at the EC2 console, so all we need to do is to refresh our roles and to find the profile that we've created just now. Here it is. And now we can launch instance. Brilliant. Lastly, our instance will need an elastic IP address. So create it on the elastic IP section. Refresh the page. And now that you can see it, associate it with our EC2. We will need it to resolve our registered domain name to a static IP address. So click Associate. Now go to your hosted zone under Route 53. If you don't have it, please create one. Once you are here, click Create Record and add Elastic IP address as its value. Done. Last bit of infrastructure that we need is an RDS database, so let's create a security group for it first. Give it a name and description. Then we need to choose a VPC for it. And let's add an inbound rule. We need only one rule that will be a custom TCP on port 3306 because I'm planning to use MariaDB. And the only source of traffic should be a security group of our Nextcloud server. So here we go. Okay, now we're ready to create our database. So let's navigate to the RDS page. Click on DB instances and then create database. Choose your engine. I'm going to use MariaDB, but you can also use PostgreSQL. Let's rename it to something like NC database. And actually, let me change the template to dev test, as it's only a demonstration. I'm going to use burstable class, but feel free to choose the settings that suit your project better. Or if you feel less confident, just copy what I'm doing here. In the connectivity, make sure to connect to the EC2 that we've created earlier. Double check that the VPC is correct. Make sure that public access is set to false. We wanted to keep it secure. And then choose the security group that we've created in a previous step. Password authentication is fine, so it will be managed by the secrets manager. I will keep enhanced monitoring on. And I think we're good to go. Once the database is created, let's SSM into our instance to test connectivity between EC2 and RDS. Once you're in the terminal, type in the following MySQL command, replacing the placeholders with the actual values. First, we need to find out the RDS endpoint. So let's click on our NC database, and you can find it here. Add it to the command. And second thing that is missing is the username, so you can retrieve it from the SM secret. Just click on retrieve secret value, and here you can see it. Again, add it to the command, and we are ready to go. Okay, MySQL is missing, so let's add it by installing MariaDB package. Let's run it. Nice, let's retry. Okay, and now let's go to Secrets Manager. This time copy password and paste it in the terminal. Nice, the connection is working. So that was it for the infrastructure part, but there's one more video where we'll be installing and configuring Nextcloud, and also we'll be managing our external storages. So I'll see you in the next video.